Welcome into the Sportsmemo betting podcast with the first ever, or maybe not first ever, but first in a long, long time for Sportsmemo, the soccer betting podcast with our soccer expert here, Nick Borrman. Nick, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hey, Drew. Good. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to do this with you, man. I'm learning myself, speaking to mostly American sports bettors, but we do have a lot of people listening from both north of the border and south of the border and on either side of the pond. So a lot of people know a lot about soccer betting, but not a lot of probably mainstream, their main sport being soccer. So excited to have you on here. Do you bet any other sports besides soccer, Nick?
I do soccer and golf.
Soccer and golf. So two niche sports there. So just kind of stay away from American football and basketball?
Well, I do a little bit. I mean, I do that on my own. But as far as sticking to, it's a niche market, like you said, and it's something that I can do year round. And I'm not going to be. I bet small money for NFL, NBA on my own stuff, and never was that confident enough to really put it out there as far as trying to, offer picks for anybody to get over time. I'm not confident enough to say I can win over time in those sports necessarily, but I certainly watch them. Love Chicago's my hometown team, the Bulls, the Bears, Blackhawks, those guys. So love to watch them. Love to bet here and there on my own, but no, on Sportsmemo, I'm just purely soccer and golf.
Okay. Good to hear. And we'll learn a little bit about soccer betting, learn a little bit about you, and also break down a couple games and get a free bet for the podcast. You can check out all of Nick's soccer betting service at sportsmemo.com. Nick, want to start off with how is soccer different in your opinion and similar to betting other sports?
Well, it's different and similar to most of the sports that obviously we're going to be familiar with here in the States. I compare it mostly to baseball and hockey, whereas they're lower scoring games, with soccer really being the lowest scoring of any of the leagues that are here in the States. So you're not going to be laying 10 points like you would in football or basketball or anything like that. And totals are usually always in the 2 to 3 goal range. So it's a different animal compared to NFL, NBA, but it's more like Major League Baseball and NHL, where you're betting a lot of money line type of spreads, where one team's going to win, and you're trying to go on that route. I'll be honest and say, when I was younger, I was never a big fan of soccer, mostly for that reason. I mean, I was always like, who wants to watch a game that ends 1-0 or even 0-0? But once you learn the sport and see the ability these guys have, you learn the appreciation. And of course, once you realize how to make money, you can pretty much love any sport. But back to how to bet soccer. Books offer many different ways to bet. You'll see some more unique, almost kind of prop-like bets offered on European books, like things like over and under on corners taken. A very popular one's called both teams to score. So you can think about how different the sport is when you have an option just to pick whether both teams score or not, because believe it or not, a big majority of games end, 1-0, 2-0, even 0-0. So there's a lot of times where one team doesn't even score throughout the game. Then there's the three-way betting line is what it's called, which is basically it's similar to our money line for NFL, where you're not using points, a point spread, but you're just trying to pick on which team is going to win. What they do is they list that as 1x2 is what you'll see that as. But for me, I'll just list the team. 1 is referred to as the home team. X is referred to as the draw, and 2 being the away team. But when I release a pick, it'll just basically say the name of the team, like Manchester United or whatever. But how that works is you're betting either the home team, the away team, or the draw. So unlike a money line bet in the NFL, for example. Although the NFL's, I guess it could tie. If the games do end in soccer in a draw, so if a game ends that way and you bet the home side, your bet's actually going to be a loss. Same is true if you bet the away team. So,
and is that referred to as an Asian handicap?
No, the Asian handicap comes in quarter goal lines, and that's a lot of what I'll do and what you'll see released from me. And when I first, started looking at the soccer betting markets, it was very weird to see a team favored by a quarter of a goal. I was like, what the hell does that even mean? But basically how that works is is you're betting any quarter goal line, whether it's a quarter of a goal, 3/4 of a goal, goal and a quarter, you can go on and on. You're actually betting two separate bets, and you're betting the half goal line above that and below that. So, for example, if I was going to be betting minus 3/4 of a goal, so somebody's favored by 3/4 of a goal, you're actually putting half of your wager on minus a half, and then half your wager on -1. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay, so -1, if they win by 1, you would push that one, and minus a half, you would win that bet?
Yes. So when you have quarter goal lines like that, you can win half your wager or lose half your wager. So in that example, yes.
If you bet $100 on that scenario, what would your account be, I guess, tomorrow morning?
Okay, so if you we'll use the example of a 3/4 goal line. If you bet $100 on a 3/4 goal line, and the team you bet on that was favored by that, let's say they lose or draw, obviously you're going to lose the full bet. If they win by 1 goal, you're going to win half of your bet. So you're going to have $50 in your account the next morning. If they win by 2 goals or more, then you're winning the full bet. Now, really this is something that kind of it was developed quite a while ago. The reason being that with only 2 or 3 goals scored in a game, there's a big difference between minus a half and -1 being whether you win by 1 goal or 2 goals. So books would originally have had to had a team favored by a half a goal, but lay 140 or 150 juice to do so, versus then on -1 you might be looking at plus 120 or plus 130 on the opposite side. So it was kind of a way to create more traditional 110 odds on either way is where these quarter goal lines come in, because nobody wants to. I mean, not a lot of people like to lay 100 150 on the juice. So it's a good way to kind of find that happy medium.
Yeah, no, that makes that makes sense. Thanks for explaining that, Nick. And a lot of people out there mostly probably focus on football and basketball, probably a little baseball when that comes around as well, both college and pro, as far as the football and basketball goes. But it might not be digging in deep as far as everyday betting on soccer games. Myself in particular, I didn't really know a bunch about soccer. I was kind of like you, why would I want to watch a 1-0 game type deal? But then I moved out of the United States for 2 years, went down to Costa Rica, saw how much they loved it, and it was almost like, they were passionate about it. It was like, I went to a couple games. I'll never forget. It was Heredia versus La Liga down there in Costa Rica. And, man, it was just wild down there in the stands, a bunch of Costa Ricans yelling, drinking, having a great time. And it was exciting to go to the games. So that's what kind of gets me interested into it, Nick. And also watching the World Cup and seeing how crazy they are. It's like college football, hell, maybe even crazier in the stands than we have it. What leagues do you focus on? Do you focus on the Central and South American leagues, or mostly the European leagues? What about MLS?
That's some cool experience you have. Not a lot of people have attended a game out of the States, so that's cool that you're able to do that, because it's a different animal when you go to a game like that. But where I focus my attention is Europe.
Okay. And why is that? Is there more value in your opinion, or you're just interested in it more?
Well, it's just like the NFL, where the best players in the world are playing in Europe. The most money is to those leagues. So, when you get to the smaller, you could almost call them second tier type of leagues or countries, you can't find information on the games. You're not going to find a lot of statistics on the games. You're not going to find a lot of information on the players. The skill levels between some of the people are just not – they're just not quite as good, not quite as crisp. So you want to be betting on the top guys, top teams, where you can really get some information. You can dig into some research and actually find useful information to be able to make a successful wager. But those are the best players in the world. I mean, those countries, kids grow up playing soccer. And, they aspire to be professional soccer players, and a lot of those guys are homegrown. Here in the United States, it's not that way. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a basketball player. There's not as many people here in the States growing up to play soccer. So even as, the Major League Soccer is actually growing quite a bit here in the United States, we're still not developing the players. And even if we are, a good example is there's a young guy named Christian Pulisic who plays for the U.S. team. He's a fantastic player, but he's good enough where he doesn't play domestically. He plays over in Germany for Dortmund. So it just shows that the best teams, the biggest money, the best footballers out there are going to Europe, and that's where I kind of focus my attention.
And where would the Major League Soccer, as far as the United States, kind of go on this realm of, I guess, what, EPL being the top, La Liga, I'm guessing, being the second? Where would MLS fall, and what would be the top ones?
There's basically 5 big European leagues. You nailed 2 of them with the Premier League and La Liga. Italy, Serie A, Germany, Bundesliga, and France League One are the others. Okay. And then they have what's neat about soccer in general is they also have, those are domestic competitions.
And then they have the Champions League. Right?
Yeah, for their own countries. And then they have the Champions League and a second-tier one called the Europa League, where they pit teams from other leagues against one another to find the best team in Europe. And that is the biggest and best tournament in the world is the Champions League, which is actually on right now. I have in the background, it's actually at halftime, I have the Real Madrid game streaming on the background right now. So, but Major League, to answer your question, Major League Soccer is well below those leagues, unfortunately, right now. But it's new. It really only started 20 years ago. It's growing quite a bit, actually. Believe it or not, when I first read this stat, I was kind of surprised, but it makes sense. It's the third highest average attendance per game of the major American sports. It's ahead of NBA and NHL, but kind of not a fair comparison because those, an outdoor stadium can certainly hold a lot more people than an indoor stadium. Like this past Saturday, they had the MLS Cup down in Atlanta. There was 70,000 fans in attendance.
Yeah, it gets crazy there, man. I used to live in Atlanta. They were wild down there.
Oh yeah. So and the game was awesome. The fans are passionate down there, and they're building. Teams are now building soccer specific stadiums. So it used to be a lot of them were shared with baseball or NFL stadiums, but now it's growing to the point where they're building their own. And the MLS is expanding. There's new teams set to be added next year in 2020 and in 2022. So it's growing, and hopefully it's kind of like a chicken and egg thing. Hopefully that means over time maybe more and more and more kids here in the U.S. will come up through the system. They'll be on the global scale as far as skill level goes, but they'll actually stay here in the States and play in the MLS. Kind of what happens now is you hear about a lot of the better players that played in the Premier League or La Liga for most of their career kind of come over to the MLS on the decline of their career and try to get a few more years here playing in the MLS. So you still get some cool names. Obviously the most famous one was years ago, David Beckham coming over to the Galaxy and playing, but now you got a guy like Zlatan Ibrahimovic who has come over this year and he's killed it in Major League Soccer, where he was probably going to be struggling for playing time on Manchester United, this year. So that's kind of where it ranks as far as global scale goes. But hopefully it grows over time. I mean, if you have a chance to go to an MLS game here in the States, they are still a fun time to go to.
And Nick, which one is your favorite league, and which is your favorite team?
Well, I guess I have several. I mean, it kind of depends on who's playing well at the time. I like to watch games that are going to be very competitive. I do have a favorite team of mine. Well, right now this year, one of my favorite teams is Ajax. They're actually in the Netherlands. They've been playing unbelievable all year. They're kind of a smaller name out there in soccer. They have actually won the Champions League years ago, but they're fantastic. They're going to the knockout stages, which start in January, and it's going to be fun to watch them going through. But I would say my favorite team is probably Dortmund, who's in Germany's Bundesliga. That's where I had mentioned the American Christian Pulisic is playing right now. Great team, a lot of young players. They're fun to watch. They're leading the league right now. They're just been around for a while. They're a great team. I also really like Juventus from Serie A, and that's before Ronaldo went over there. I guess if anybody knows anything about soccer, they may have heard that Ronaldo does play for Juventus now this year, left Real Madrid. So But those are my two top teams. And really, my favorite league is the Premier League. I mean, it's the most competitive games. It's the deepest league. It's the most money of any of the leagues, and you're getting the best players in the world. And that's where hopefully we can make the most money as we go through the season.
And do you have any opinion on Stoke City, just off the top of your head?
As far as
I don't know, that's my team. Like I had some friends in Atlanta. They were always like, "Oh, you got to have a team in the EPL to root for," and I chose Stoke City because their sponsor was Bet365.
I was going to say, so what's in the European markets, it's different. They have embraced the betting world, and yes, they have teams and stadiums have sponsors that are betting sites, and it's pretty neat to see. But Stoke is. Right now they're not even in the Premier League.
Oh no,
they're down. Yeah, they're down in the second tier league called the Championship. So, and I'm glad you kind of brought that up, and it brings up a cool point about soccer in general is how they handle it's something called relegation or promotion. So, let's take the Premier League for example. They have 20 teams in the league. The top, well. It's the top league in England, obviously. So the top teams, they qualify for the Champions League for the following year. But the bottom three teams of the Premier League each year get relegated to the league below it, which is currently called the Championship League. So Stoke is not in the Premier League right now. They have been relegated down to the Championship. But think about the term tanking, right? In the NBA to tank to try to get draft picks or something like that. In soccer, in these big leagues, there is no such thing. There's just as much pressure and just as much on the line for the teams playing at the bottom of the league as there is at the top of the league because you don't want to be relegated. I mean, the money, advertising from TV, the money in the Premier League is just so much better for these teams than it is when you fall down to that next level. So Stoke, unfortunately, is not in the Premier League right now. They are hopefully maybe they'll get back here in a few years. I don't think I'd actually have to look up to see where they stood the Championship at this point in time in the standings, but maybe they'll be back up here in a couple of years.
God, that's something the American sports need to do. You brought up like NBA. I think it needs to happen there, to the point where maybe like the bottom 8 teams just have their own little league, and same thing in college football. Like some of these teams in the small conferences, if they win it a bunch of times, I think they should be bumped up. And the same way the other way, if a SEC or ACC Pac-12 team sucks a bunch, then knock them down, we could
absolutely
learn something from them.
Yeah, it really creates some awesome competition throughout the year. And like I said, at the end of the year, sometimes the top of the league is already done. I mean, you take last year, Manchester City had the league won 5 weeks with 5 weeks to go, but the bottom 3 spots were a fight until that last day, and that last goal on that last day can make all the difference between staying there in the big league and playing the big boys or falling down to that next level and pretty much not even being seen on TV anymore. So it is a cool system, and yeah, you're right. It would be nice if American sports kind of developed something like that.
Cool. Well, Nick, let's get into breaking down some games and get your free play out there for the listeners. And guys, we do have a coupon code here. It's soccer half. It's we'll just do SOC. So just the 3 symbols for soccer, SOC, and then the word half, HALF. So that's SOC HALF for half off of any of Nick's 3-day, 7-day. 30-day, 90-day, all-access passes there at sportsmemo.com. By using SOC half at checkout, you can get half off on sportsmemo.com. Any of his all-access packages. Nick, we got a couple games here. Let's break down and get your free play out there. On Saturday in La Liga, we got Real Madrid at Rayo Vallecano. What is it again?
Vallecano.
Vallecano. All right, a Spanish name there. Thanks for helping me out.
Over time, you learn to make the pronunciations of the different countries these teams are from. Your French pronunciations, your Spanish pronunciations. It'll come over time.
All right, Rayo Vallecano hosting Real Madrid, or I'm not sure, with the home and away, if maybe you can go over that top and bottom. But either way, Real Madrid minus 2.5 goals with a total of 4. These must be high-powered offenses here. Total of 4, Nick, but I'll let you have at it.
All right. Yeah. Usually you're not going to see a goal line quite as high as 2.5. Usually it's a half a goal, sometimes a goal. But this just indicates that one team, Real Madrid, of course, that's the name everybody knows, is heavily favored over Rayo Vallecano. And really the over-under on being at 4, again, not similar, is very high. Usually you're seeing those in the 2 to 3 goal range. So odds makers have this line where they think it's going to be a big win for Madrid, and possibly with quite a few goals in there. But I'll tell you, my feeling right now is not the it's not the case. I'm not agreeing with that line. I see a lot of value on Rayo for this game. If you've watch any of the games this year, you would know that Madrid is just not the same as they were in years past. Obviously, the big reason there is the loss of Ronaldo up front, and they're struggling to score like they used to without him. But, don't get me wrong, they're still a quality team. They got guys like Gareth Bale, Karim Benzema, Marco Asensio all up front. And they actually have the winner of this year's Balloon d'Or, Luka Modric. Luka Modric, he's what that award is. It's the best player in the planet, and he helped Real Madrid win the Champions League last year, and he actually plays for Croatia. And of course, if you watch the World Cup this year, they were runners up to France. So he was the first player in 10 years that not named Ronaldo or Messi to win the award. So good for him, cool to see. And of course, he's still on Real Madrid, so they're still a deep team. They're still stacked, but another big loss they had for them this year was their manager, Zinedine Zidane. He stepped down after they won the title last May, and they really kind of have been struggling to find their way under their manager that they had in the beginning of the year, who actually got canned already this season. They went through a stretch back in October where they set a record for themselves. They didn't score a goal in 465 minutes, which excuse me, at 90 minutes a game, is over five full games of time. So it's a pretty bad stretch they had. They fired him after they lost 1-5 to Barcelona. And now under their current manager, Santiago Solari, they do have seemed to find their stride again. They won 9 of their last 10 games, but they're just not running away. They're not beating teams like they should be in La Liga, and certainly but not by this line. They've been overvalued all year, mainly because of the name. They're actually only 4-9 against the spread in league play this year, and they've only covered this number, 2.5 goals, twice this year. Both of those times were in the first 3 games of the year. So since then, they haven't covered this number in 12 straight league games. On the opposite side, Rayo Vallecano is certainly not a great side. They're newly promoted to La Liga this season from La Liga 2, so talking about promotion and relegation. They're new to the big league this year, and they haven't fared too well with their results. They have just 2 wins and 4 draws so far this year in 15 games. They currently sit 19th in the table out of 20 teams, so they're in that position to be relegated back down next year. However, they've been really mostly undervalued against the spread, and they've managed a decent 8-7 against the spread mark this year. And they've fared well actually against the big names and the big spreads where they were favored by underdogs by 2 goals to Atletico Madrid and Barcelona, and they covered both of those games, losing each one just by 1 goal. So one of those games actually they earned a red card and were still able to keep pace. So pretty impressive. They've only failed to cover this number 3 times this season. So assuming they can keep their starting team on the field and not get a red card and not have to play a man down, I like their chances of keeping this game within the number. So I think Rayo's got the skill to keep it within 2 goals. And again, just because Real Madrid isn't playing to their level, they're just not putting the ball in the net this year, like they were last year with Ronaldo scoring 4 or 5 times a game. I think Rayo's going to keep it close. I think they'll win the game? Probably not, but I think they can keep it within 1 or 2 goals. So free play on this game is taking Rayo Vallecano at plus 2.5 goals.
Okay, makes a lot of sense there, Nick. And we got another game here in the EPL on Sunday. So giving out a Saturday and a Sunday breakdown here. We got Chelsea versus Brighton, I believe, 1.25. This gets to your quarter goals, I'm guessing. Maybe you can explain that quickly again. And 2.5 being the total. How would you look to bet this Chelsea game on Saturday? Or on Sunday, excuse me.
Yeah, so you're right. 1.25 goals is the goal line. And again, to recap, what that means is you're betting half your wager on 1 goal, Chelsea favored by 1 goal, and then the other half on Chelsea favored by 1.5 goals. And the total set at 2.5. So This game, really, Chelsea come into this match off a huge win last weekend against Man City. Man City was undefeated, defending champs. This was their first loss they've had in the Premier League in quite some time, and obviously this year. And with that, Liverpool actually took over the top spot in the Premier League from that game. They played great. They really limited City's chances at goal, which is hard to do. City is really, really stacked. So they moved into fourth in the table. Chelsea did with the win. And now as they travel to Brighton, they have to be careful here. I mean, it sets up as your normal letdown situation against Brighton, who really are not one of the top teams. They sit 13th in the table right now out of 20 teams. And they're actually coming into this game off a bad loss at Burnley. Burnley is bottom of the table, who they're actually winless in their last 8 games before beating Brighton last weekend. But Brighton was playing well before the match. They had earned points in 3 of their previous in their 3 previous games, with 2 wins and a draw, and they earned 5 wins in their last 8 games. So they were actually playing well before that loss to Burnley. And at home, they've been playing well, especially as of late, winning 3 of their last 4 with the draw in the other game. And they even won over Man United at home this year, 3-2 back early in the first game of the year. So they have the ability at home to keep up with the big boys. And I just think, with Chelsea beating Man City last weekend, I think there's a good chance for a letdown situation for them here. I think Brighton can cover the number. I think they're going to keep it within a goal. Which, again, going back to the goal line, if they do lose by just that 1 goal, we're still going to win half of our bet. So another free play I'll throw out there is Brighton plus 1.25 goals. And again, if Chelsea wins by a goal, we're still winners.
All right, Nick. Well, good breakdown there, man. Anything else you want to throw out? I guess soccer related.
Really, I mean, I would probably just throw out there, we tend not to think about it much, but soccer, it's the biggest sport in the world. It's watched by more people than any other sport. It's a game that has some of the best athletes in the world. Kids are growing up playing soccer in every other country but the United States, and it's a great sport to get into. There's a lot of money to be made as you get into it and learn some of the leagues. And if you give it a chance, it's a fun game to watch. I recommend if the listeners out there, if you've never gone to a game, check out an MLS game next season. The season just ended last weekend, but starts back up next March. And there's plenty of teams out there, plenty of big cities that you can travel to check out a game. But I recommend seeing a game. They're a lot of fun. The environment's exciting, and I think it'll help get a lot of the American public into the sport.
All right, Nick. Well, yeah, great breakdowns there. Thanks for explaining the soccer betting markets. Follow Nick on Twitter at Borrman00. That's BORRMAN00 on Twitter. Also remember the coupon code SOC. Half, HALF, all one word, capitalized, for half off of any of his all-access packages on sportsmemo.com. 2 breakdowns there with the free bets. Appreciate it, Nick. Best of luck with your bets. Best of luck with everyone's bets out there. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll be back tomorrow with the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast.